Hello everybody, I'm back with another pod today. You know, I've been experimenting with a form recently, and it keeps coming up, and I think I'm gonna make a series of these sort of pods, and so you'll be seeing a lot of things like this more, until I really hone it and get it working. And I think that these pots are a good balance between potential and efficiency. I feel like I can make them, quite a lot of them, and I don't burn out. And then there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong or things to go right uh, within the processes of getting to this form. And I think for me, this is one of those things where once you develop something along, it starts to become its own thing, right? And so that can be taken into just about anything, I believe, right? Not just with ceramics, but also within a lot of aspects of life, right? If you give something enough attention and enough care, eventually you'll start to notice new things about it, right? And so I think that this is one of those, one of the results of that line of thinking. And I can also make them relatively quick, and so I can make more videos for you guys potentially. But just doing some my first poll there. Another thing to talk about this pot is that this pot isn't necessarily a well thrown pot, right? You'll see eventually that I actually made it a little bit too thin on the bottom, and so a lot of weight was on it and was distorting the form. But that ended up not even mattering. I used a tool to compress the clay just so it could stay upright enough, and then eventually it collapsed in on itself after I did my sort of surface designing of the form. And so you'll get to see, like, when you're starting to lose a pot, it doesn't mean the pot is dead, right? You just have to assess what's going on, and once you assess and plan for a new angle of approach, that's when things can get really interesting, right? And it's almost like working out or lifting weights, right? If any of you have ever lifted weights, you know that, like, once you like overload that muscle, right, it causes like little tears, right? That tension causes all those little tears, and then uh, with that tension, something gets built up after once it starts to heal, right? In the same way, you want to build a sort of tension or a resistance to failure in your practice. The more you make something, and right when you bring it to the edge of failure, that's when real growth is going to start happening in your own practice. I think a lot of production potters and a lot of potters in general, they see a key form and then they aim for that always. And I don't think that's a great idea. I actually think that you should be aiming for the hard stuff, the things that are gonna fail, right? Because one time it's gonna just work out well, and then it's gonna launch you or catapult you into a whole new direction. And so you can see here I'm using a tool to sort of compress that part where it was bellying out at the bottom, and you'll see it keeps doing it after I do another pull. And I just have too much clay on the top, and it's uneven. It's not really that centered, and I'm in my head. It's panic mode. It's like, oh shit! All right, shit is gonna go down. Let's see if I can figure it out. And so I'm compressing after that. What's it called? The compression. I'm collaring after that compression pull and seeing if I can just establish a top part just before it gets a little bit too wobbly on the bottom. And you can see it's really starting to kick out every rotation. Right on that bottom quarter, that hip is really starting to build out, like belly out, and then it's going to cause some trouble for us. You can see how uncentered that top is, just bringing up all that uncertainness right to that top rim, and you can see that this pot is really in a rough spot right now. And so I've been finding out that this sort of belly inward shape causes for like some good shaped blossoms, and so I'll be doing more of that. And here you can see I'm starting to make those lines. And I didn't really get them perfect this time, so you can see. And it's all about just establishing and aligning those things. I think sometimes I should just probably go a little bit slower and would work out well. And then, like I said, it's all about the repetition with forms like these, is just emphasizing that same repetition, and it will start doing some pretty interesting stuff. And you can see it's starting to sit right now. And now I don't even have to worry about that bottom, right? That clay is already kind of just like folded over itself, and it actually adds some strength to it, believe it or not. It will be easier to just fall off center. You can see sometimes I'll be spreading my pinky, my hand apart a little bit on that top, and that's just to hold that rim together. Sometimes if you just do it at one point when it's like in this shape, it will totally fall. And then I did a classic blossom shape where I just collar in drastic, like a harsh drastic collar, and then that kind of made this blossom shape. It's a natural blossom instead of the forced flat blossom. And then all I did was just address that top rim. It didn't look sharp, and so I just kind of let it rotate around on center there. And you can see how, like, just from the collapse, it's become something totally different, right? It's not even a pot. It's not even a vessel anymore. You know, it's like stressed out, or I don't even know. But it's definitely interesting. This one specifically, it started tipping over after I took it off the wheel, and so it looks like it's totally like about to topple over. I had to put a little stand next to it to keep it up, so it didn't completely fall off, but it is just a gnarly pot. You can see I'm getting ready to adjust that rim. Like I said before, making that bottom thing almost like a dish or a plate, and having it flare out, like in and then out on that bottom, sort of that little scoop shape inward. It really helps out with creating these little flanges that I almost think look like grass. And so, as you can see, that's what I got. You know, I was really a fan of today's pot, and I think it's just a good reminder that push yourself. You know, like, don't just try to make like if it's hard for you to just make a cup, I understand, but try to make something more than just some of these standard vessels that we know, right? Try to test the limits, and you don't know, if you do something long enough that seems like a failure, it might become its own entire body of work. And so thanks for watching. All the best, and strong mentality. Peace.